Well, hello Internet, and welcome to my Susy video tutorial. In this one tutorial, I'm going to teach you pretty much everything you need to know about Susy to start using it right now to create really awesome websites. Now, Susy is a grid toolkit or framework that is extremely easy to use. It's going to integrate seamlessly with Sass, which I have a tutorial on that I covered previously. And it basically is just going to require a few settings followed by defining what elements go where, and it's just going to work. Susy is a great alternative to Bootstrap, and in this tutorial today, I hope to show you all the things that make it great. Now, for Susy, you're going to need Ruby as well as Sass installed, and in the description underneath the video, I show you exactly how to install those. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so here I am in the terminal, and this is going to work equally well in Windows as well as Linux as well as OS X. Pretty much everything is exactly the same. Basically, inside of your web server, you're going to first off have to install Ruby, so go do that. And like I said in the description, there is a video on that. And then you want to make sure inside of your terminal that you are using the correct version of Ruby. So we're going to type in rvm use default 2.2, and then if you type in Ruby -v, you're going to see that we have Ruby 2.2. Anything above that's going to be great. Then what you want to do is check all of the gems that you have installed, because we're going to have a couple new ones installed here, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Basically, we're going to want this version of Compass or anything above it. This version right here, 1.1 alpha, that guy. You're also going to want to make sure you have Sass 3.4 or above, as well as Susy 2.2. So this is version 2 of Susy that I'm going to use here. I'm going to show you exactly how to install all those right now. First off, to install the version of Compass that we're going to need, we're going to type in gem install Compass and then --pre like that. And you can see right there, there is the 1.1 alpha and everything is installed. Also, it's going to install the correct version of Sass for us automatically. Then we're going to have to come in and install Susy. So just type in Susy, and there we go, gem install Susy. I also want to come in here and use breakpoint. In my next tutorial, I'm going to cover responsive web design. I'm going to get a little bit more into breakpoint, but we're going to install that, and I'm going to touch on it a bit in this tutorial. We're also going to install normalize. You can see everything here just installs quite easy. And then it's also a good idea to go gem outdated to make sure that all of your gems are updated. And I swear every single time I do this, I end up having some things that are outdated, even though I do this almost every single day. And then if you have some that are updated, which you almost definitely will, you're going to go gem update and load those in, and it's going to install everything for you. Alright, so now everything is all updated, and I'm just going to clear that back. Now what I want to do, you just want to make sure you have Compass 1.1, Sass 3.4 or above, and Susy 2.2. Okay, so to make sure you have all those, then we're going to install our bundler, and this stuff's just going to make everything much easier. So gem install bundler, and then we're going to go bundle init, and what this is going to do is create a gem file for us in which we're going to make sure that we point at the right gems so we use the right gems. So if we go ls, you're going to see there is our gem file, and I'm going to open this up in Sublime. So gem file, open them up however you open things up. And then after you do that, you're going to go in your gem file and define exactly what you want to use. So we want to use Compass, and we want to use a specific version of Compass, because you might have multiple versions. And this is a way that I've been able to have other people easily install this stuff and make sure that it all works. And of course, in the description, I'm going to have a link to all this stuff so you can just copy and paste it. So we got Compass and the right version. We then want to make sure that we have Sass and the correct version of Sass, and make sure that you use whatever version you have installed. Type gem list, get the right one. Okay, because your versions might be slightly different than mine. They're just going to be newer, that's all. 2.2.2, and breakpoint, and normalize, and there we go. And we can save that. Then we can jump back over here to our terminal, and we're just going to type in bundle install. And it's going to get all the gem data and make sure that it's using all the correct gems and the right versions. One thing to remember here is previously in our Sass tutorial, when we were using Compass, we would always type in Compass watch to make sure that it would automatically update all of our CSS files. Right now, since we're doing things the way we're doing them, we're instead going to go bundle exec Compass watch. And I'll be showing you that here in a second as well. And now what we want to do is come in and make a Susy project. And we're going to do that by going Compass, create, and I'll just go Susy ex -r Susy -u Susy. And there we go. And it created all of our files that we're going to want to use. There's everything right there. Super. And now we can come in here and go ls and change over to Susy EX, which is the new guy we just created. And there are all our files. And we could go subl for Sublime and a dot. And it's going to open everything up in Sublime. All right, so let's go and load this here. And remember to have Compass automatically update all of our CSS files. We're going to have to come in here and go bundle, exec, Compass, watch, and everything's just going to work on its own. Over here you can see all of our files that were created. Here are our SAS files. Grids, that's where all the settings for Susy are going to be. There's the style sheets and there's the style. And we're going to be working with the config file next. You can see it automatically installed Susy as well as Compass. We're also going to come in here and say require breakpoint. And there we go, got that set up. Down here with the HTTP path, you might not have to do this, but I do. I have to put 2 dots in front of there. Just try them out, see which one works best for you. And as well, I'm going to have a couple other directories. This is going to be the CSS directory, which is style sheets, which is the same as right there. So you know that works. SAS, we also have a SAS folder over here. Images and JavaScripts we have right here. So let's just jump over here into our terminal again, see what directory we're in. And you would type dir to do this instead of ls if you're on Windows. And Susy EX like this. ls, and I can just come in here and make a images directory as well as make a JavaScripts directory. And there we go, have all our directories all set up, and we're going to be watching this guy to make sure that it installs everything. Down here I want to use expanded. I'm going to use compact or compressed later on. I'm going to use compressed later on when I want to be able to use this in the real world, and we're just going to go like this. And this is just an example of how the information is going to be output to the CSS file. Again, if you haven't watched my SAS tutorial, a lot of this doesn't make any sense. I covered it all in detail there. And here I'm going to also make this true so that we will be able to target my images folder. And there we go. It doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. I'm going to cover this in a lot of detail and provide a lot of SAS examples as we go on. And that is all we're going to have to do with our config file. And now I'm going to create a couple different partial files, which we're going to load into our SCSS files or our SAS files. And then I'm going to bounce over into the terminal again and go ls, and I'm going to change into my SAS folder, and I'm going to make a couple other different folders inside of here. So make directory, and this is going to be where all my partials go. So I'm going to call that partials, and you can see it opened up there inside of our SAS directory. And I'm going to create a couple new files here. First off, I'm going to create a layout file. I'm going to call this file underscore layout.css and save that. And I'm just going to cover some real basic things. So I'm going to go HTML, and I want to be using the rem units, and what that's going to allow me to do is have all of my sizing be consistent all across the entire web document based off of the font size, or one font size that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to go main font size, and I'm going to define this guy. I'm going to have to go into partials again and go new file, and I'm going to save this guy as variables underscore variables.scss and save that. And inside of here I'm going to define the default font size. Like I said, it's going to be used document wide as well as a whole bunch of different colors, and that's all I'm going to do with variables, so I can just close that out. And then document wide also I want to use border box, and what border box is going to allow me to do is collapse the padding as well as the margins and borders inside of the height and width of any element. So it's going to make sure that elements don't sort of like bounce off of each other and cause havoc. And once again, we can save that right there, and I covered that in the SAS tutorial as well. So we're done with the layout file as well, so we can close that. And now let's go in and open up the grids file, which is the guy that Susy created for us, and then let's add in a whole bunch, literally every setting, and I'm going to walk you through every single one of them. But first, before I do that, basically what this is saying here, columns, is in our grid system by default we're going to have 12 columns, and that's pretty much all you need to know about that. And that our gutters in this situation are going to be 1/4 the size of our columns. I'm going to change this to 1. So our columns are going to be exactly the same size as our gutters in this situation. Okay, so now let's go through what every other setting here does. Now you're not normally going to use all these different settings. Actually, I'm going to show you here in a minute about what you're normally going to use, but I want to let you know what all the different settings do. So columns just defines number of columns in your grid. That's it. Gutters are going to be the size of the gutters in relation to your columns. When I have 1 inside of here, that means that it's going to be exactly exactly the same size. Math for fluid down here. What this means when it's marked as fluid is that the grids are going to be calculated as a percentage relative to the container, and the container is literally going to be the whole entire grid system. So everything inside of the container is the grid system, and I'm going to create one here in a moment. If, however, you would put static inside of here, grids would be calculated as a multiple of the column width using EM as a default. You're normally going to use fluid, but we'll get into that later on. And of course, you could go in here and use the HTML and CSS and then go in and change these guys bit by bit, and that will show you exactly how they're going to work. I'm not going to do that, but that's a great thing you can do after you watch this tutorial to sort of really learn about these settings. Column width, we're going to define that as 40 pixels, and that's just what it is. You can put in whatever size you'd like for that. Output float, you're going to almost always have this be output float, which is just a simple float layout. Otherwise, it's going to use isolate, which is the other thing you can put inside of here, which is sort of an absolute positioning for float. It's a little bit complex though, and I personally never use it, so chances are you won't either. Gutter position, when we're talking about a grid system, basically we're going to have columns, which we're going to align everything up against, and those columns are going to be divided by another thing called a gutter. So you're going to have column, gutter, column, gutter. You're going to see here in a moment. But basically what we're defining here is where we want the gutter to be positioned. And we can either have it be before, we could have it after, we could have it be split, which means half on one side, half on the other side, or you could put it inside. I'm normally going to use after, and I'm going to use after in this tutorial. Again, how are things going to flow on your screen? Left to right or right to left. That's all that means. For the container, we can either have that set for auto, we could provide it with an absolute width or a percentage. So it's up to you. I'm going to leave that set at auto. Container position. This defines how to align the container relative to the parent. So whatever element is surrounding the container, that is what this is going to define. I'm going to have this also set for center in this situation. You could have it set for left, which means that the container would go to left justification in the parent, have it center of course, or right. This is going to be last flow is going to define the float direction of the last element. From is going to float to the left, and to is going to float in the opposite direction, which is going to be to the right. So to is going to float to the right in this situation. Global box sizing, I'm going to use border box again. I'm going to put border box here, as well as putting border box over here inside of my layout. This guy right here. And once again, that's just going to, whenever you define an element's height and width, it's going to enclose the padding and the borders and the margins inside of that area, so it makes everything easier to lay out. And that's most of the settings you're ever going to worry about. Then you have the debug section, which is just going to define whether you want to show the grids on the screen or not, which of course you wouldn't do in production, and the color that you want to have for your grids. This guy right here is going to show the debug image as a background or as an overlay. So you don't want it to be in background, you want it to be an overlay, just type in overlay, and that's whatever you want it to be. And then this guy right here is going to position a toggle to show and hide overlay options. So I'm going to have that be in the top right hand corner. Then you have use custom. Inside of here we're going to have background image, which I'm going to have set to true, which means that it's going to use the provided background image for debugging. Background options, I have this set for false, which is going to output the background options to the CSS. Again, nothing you really need to be concerned about. Box sizing I have set to true, which means that we should go out and look for the existing box sizing. Clear fix, going to be marked as false. If it was marked as true, that would mean that we wanted to look for an internal clear fix before using it. Don't worry about that. And then finally we have rem. And whenever you have this set to true, we're defining that we want the units that we're going to be using to be based off of rem, which as I mentioned previously are going to be relative to the font size of whatever the root element is. And we already defined that. See, there's the font size, and every single thing on our web page is going to be based off of this size right here. And again, it's just going to help us with consistency. So that is all you need to know about the settings. Actually, it's way more than you need to know about the settings with Susy. Normally, what you can do to easily set up this stuff is just go Susy and layout, how many columns you want, the gutter size, fluid layout, float, and outside. That's normally what you need to do. So a lot of people probably left this tutorial whenever looking at all these settings. In fact, you can get away with using this pretty much every single time. But I'm going to use all the settings I had previously, and let's go and start writing this website. Okay, so I went in and created my index.html file, and that's just going to be stored in the main Susy EX directory or whatever. The name doesn't mean anything, of course. And you can see everything here is really simple. We didn't have to use any kind of crazy class names. None of these names mean anything. They're just names I picked, wrapper, and here's our header section right here. Navigation sector, here's going to be where the grid is going to be affecting things. As you can see, first row has no meaning, it's just what I gave it, so you don't need to use specific class names or anything. And you'll see here I have a picture gallery and content bars and everything. And basically you just have to divide everything up based off of how you want your content to be laid out, and the grids are just going to work on their own. And that is all the HTML right there. And of course in the description you can get a copy of it. So now to style everything, I'm going to go into style.scss. Remember, we want Compass to be able to create everything for us. And inside of this guy, there's grids, which is where all of our settings are for inside of Susy. And we're just going to come inside of here, and we need to import a couple more things. So we'll go import, and we'll import all of the partials that we have created. So there's normalize. And these are in no specific order. Variables, which are going to have our default font size as well as all of the different colors that we wanted. Here's our layout file, and you may notice this says layout, and over here, see it says layout with an underscore. Just remember that. Well, we need to also go import breakpoint. I want to demonstrate how breakpoint works. And now I'm going to go and just paste inside of here all of my generic CSS data. So this is just all of the things that do not pertain at all to my grid system. It's just how everything is going to be colored. So here is our header. It's just the height, background color, margins, all that different stuff. None of this pertains to Susy. And you can see here I'm using the Sass nested way of styling everything here. And you can just see it's very, very simple. It's just basically the size and if there are any background colors. So now let's save that, and let's go and see exactly what that looks like in the browser. Now, one thing that happens every once in a while, things will not update, and all we need to do in those situations is to just hit Control-C over here and then reload this guy. And this happens every once in a while. It's not really a big deal. And then whenever we reload it, it gave me a little bit of an error. I forgot to put normalize inside of here, so let's create that. Of course, we're going to do that over in partials, so new file, and we're going to paste in our normalized file, and we're going to call that underscore normalize. .scss, just as I have right there. Save it in the partials and save. And that's going to set a lot of defaults across my whole entire website. So we can close that and reload this. And now you can see everything is laid out here on the screen, but it's very, very sloppy. So we're going to want to fix all those different things for us. And to do that, we're going to do everything in style.scss, and we'll get into the Susy specific type of things. Now, if I want to target the header, I just type in header just like I would do any other time. And if I want the header to span the entire area that's available and eliminate any floating issues, I would just type in include and full. Let's go and pause here for a moment and actually set it up so that the grid shows up on our screen. And to do that, all we need to do is to assign the container to our wrapper, which goes around every single thing on our screen. So include container. And that's how easy that is. And we save that and reload it. And now you can see our grid right here. One thing you can know is you could also set the size for the container just by passing in, let's say we wanted to pass in 800 pixels. You could do that, but I'm just going to leave it the way that it is right now. We can now go into the header section, and let's say that we want to position the logo a little bit different. I'm going to use Sass, of course, and just target the logo like this. And then let's say that I want the logo to take up, you can actually take up percentages of size. So if I wanted to take up one column, I would just type in include span, and I could put 1 inside of there and reload it. But let's say I thought that was a little bit too small. I could actually put a percentage inside here, like I said. Let's say it's like 1.35, and there you can see it lines up a little bit nicer. Another thing we can do inside of here is add in wide or wider. If we type in wide, it's going to take up 1 gutter's worth of space. If we typed in wider, like that, it's going to take up 2 gutter's worth of space. Reload that. There you can see it takes up some space. I'm just playing with some things just so I can show you a whole bunch of different styles and ways that we can use Susy. I'm also going to come in here and use the Sass shortcuts, image height, where I point at the actual logo that I have here, and image width. so that they size properly. And now if I wanted to position this H1 tag here so that it floats over here on the right side of the screen, I could also target that. That's also in our header section, so I'm just going to say H1. And if I wanted to go into the last two columns or start displaying in the last two columns, I just go include, span, and then last two, and you can see it bounced over there, and we can move it around. You can see right here, here's the last two columns, and that's where it starts off at. If I wanted to do something with breakpoints just for the heck of it, so that this guy is going to be moved anytime the size of our browser window changes, I could just go include, breakpoint, and let's say that I wanted to find whenever the max width goes anywhere below 50 EM. I want to move our little header guy, for example, meaning this H1 tag over here. I could come in and just change it that easy. So let's say I wanted to move it over 4 spaces or 2 spaces. I could just go last 4, and now it'll be positioned at the last 4 spot. And now you can see that, see it? Right whenever it gets beyond that 50 EM mark right here, it's going to automatically jostle over that H1 tag right there on our screen. So very, very useful, and I'll get more into breakpoints later on. The nav section here, I want this to take up the full section and not have any issues with floating on the left or the right, so we can just go include full. And now for each one of those navigation items, if I want each of the items to take up 3 columns of the total layout area, I can just go nav, item, and then include, span, and then say that I want to take up 3 columns. And actually, let's go and create a brand new layout for this, because we can actually have multiple Susy layouts here that we're going to be able to use. And in this situation, I want to create one that is not going to display our gutters on our screen, so that there's not any gaps between our navigation items. So I'm going to just call this nav Susy layout, and then just define layout, and let's just keep the columns the same, 12, and then 0 for the gutter, and then let's use fluid and float, and then have this set for inside, and then jump back, and I did this in underscore grids.scss, jump back over here, and now I can just define 3 of, and point at that different layout that we just created. So nav Susy layout, like that. And there you can see all the items lay out there on our screen. Now let's go in here and fix some of this other stuff. Maybe something else I want to do is add a margin to the bottom of this guy. I could actually use the width of 1 column as the margin size. So let's say that I wanted to do something like margin bottom. If I wanted to use the value for that to be 1 column in size, I just type in span 1. And there you can see it's sort of moved down. You're going to see this more as we correct all this other slop that's on here. It's a little bit messy right now. Now what it can do is go in and really start styling these guys. And I'm going to target this first row right here, and then all of these other columns right here. And what I want to do is I want to have this guy take up 1 column, and then I want to split these 2 guys into another column and these 2 guys into another column. So how hard is that to do? Well, let's come after the wrapper section. Makes a little bit more sense. We're going to target first row, first off. I'm going to call clear both on this, get rid of floating issues. Then I'm going to target first, which is going to be the first column that we have here. And if I wanted to take up the first 4 total columns on a screen, at include, span, and I'm going to say first 4, and I'm just going to keep going here so that you'll see the final product. Now if I want to take these columns that are inside of this div called second right here, I can just come over here and go second. Then I could say I want to place these in the last 8 spaces that are available on the screen. So at include, span, last 8, because remember the first 4 are going to be taken up by this other div that we had here. So right like this. And then I could come in and place all the individual divs inside of here. Let's go 9th child, and let's point at the first one, and then we'll say that we want to take up 2 columns starting at the first of the 8 that we have. So I'll go span. I want to take up 2 columns starting at first of the 8 that we said we wanted to work with. Put a semicolon there. And then we're basically going to do exactly the same thing. Let's go and open this up so you can see this really well. And we'll do this for the other 4. And we'll target the 2nd child, the 3rd child, and the 4th child. And you're going to see what this looks like in a moment. And then we're going to say that we want to target 3 of 8, and this is going to be 5 of 8, and this is going to be 7 of 8. Save that. And if we reload it, you can see that they all line up. This guy's taking up 4 spaces. This one's going to take up 2 columns. You can see the columns there, 2 columns, 2 columns, 2 columns. So that's exactly how we would go in and place all those. Now let's go into this guy, and I'm going to demonstrate how galleries work, and at the same time how to take columns or elements that are in columns and spread them apart and do all kinds of other different things. Another thing, just because I'm here, I could also come in and let's say I wanted to put a break statement to throw this child element underneath of it. I could just come in here and go @include break, and that would pop that child element down below. And you can see it sort of went down there. It looks a little bit ugly though. But I just threw that in there just to talk about break. You can experiment with that on your own. Basically, it just splits the child element down, but at the same time, it's going to keep them in 5 of 8 like we defined here. So play around with it, something to explore. So now what I want to do is come down here to the picture gallery, and I'm going to place this in here as a gallery. So go pick gallery and include clear fix. I do this all the time, just keeps everything nice and neat. Another thing we could do is we could define, let's say, padding. I talked about how to use column sizes as an element or a value. You could also do the same thing with gutter. We could put 12 inside of here. Something like that. I want to add padding to the sides of this guy as well. So we can go padding. I'm just going to set this to 0, 10 pixels. I just throw things out there as I think of them or remember them. So now I'm going to target the divs inside of my picture gallery that's going to contain all those divs. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say each one of those divs needs to take up 2 of every 12 for all of the different pictures that we have. So I'm going to say gallery 2 of 12. There you are. Logical. I could also come in and do div just to do something a little bit funky. And I could target the 5th child like this. And let's say that I want to make it the last element, even though it doesn't take up all 6 spaces. Well, I just go last like this. However, to make sure that that works for us, I'm going to have to come in here and make sure that I import compass. So let's save that, and that's in my grids.scss, just another import. And clearfix is just going to make sure that the element, the picture gallery, is going to completely surround all of the elements that are inside of it. Make everything line up. Okay, so here we are. And here you can see if I reload that, how these are all going to line up in our gallery. And it's just going to take up 2 of the 12 total columns. You could also see how I moved over the 5th div into the last position right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get content 1 and content 2. Again, jump over here. You can see these 2 guys right here. And I'm just going to have them line up and take up half of the total space that's available underneath. So they're going to both be on the same row. So this is going to be content bar. That's what we're going to be targeting this time. Just come over here again. We're going to go dot and content bar. But actually, since I'm here, why don't I play around with some stuff here that I didn't cover. I'm also going to come in and I'm going to target the first item right here. That guy right there. Pick 1. Sorry, I'm jumping around. I'm just thinking of different ways to incorporate all the different things I wanted to teach here, because there is a lot of it. Let's say that I wanted to take this guy, picture 1, that's what I'm targeting here, and I want to move it over 1 column. What I could do is I could just go include and then pre and put in 1 like that, and you can see it moved over. I could also, pretty much in exactly the same way or complete opposite, I could go pull, save that. It's going to move it to the left 1 space, and there you can see it moved over. Different ways to move these guys around. We also have prefix, which is going to move our content 1 column. And by content, I mean whatever is inside the element. So you can see pick 1 there is moved over. And you could also move it to the left by putting in suffix, SUF. And there you can see pick 1's moved over to the left. So a couple other different ways to manipulate your elements using Susy. Now let's get back to content bar. Once again, I'm going to add padding to the sides. So let's go padding and then 0, and let's say we want to add 10 pixels to the side. We could also go margin top and get our gutter like we did previously to add that as the margin. And now I'm going to go in and get our first child inside of there, which is going to be content 1. And if I want it to take up 6 of 12, we just go include span 6 of 12. We could also add a specifically sized gutter before, after, inside, or split, which means part's going to go on one side and one's going to be on the other side. Here, I'm going to say that I want to add 3 EM inside. I'm going to say gutters, 3 EM inside. We could also do the breakpoint thing so that this content 1 and content 2 are going to be on the same row, except in a situation in which we have our browser sort of shrink down, and then it's going to have them take up all the rows. You could do that by just going include breakpoint. And these breakpoints don't have to be the same either. And here we'll have that this will take effect whenever this is less than 40 EM. And in that situation, we're going to say include span, we'll say 12 of 12. which means it'll take up all the columns. And then we'll go in and do the same sort of thing for the last content, or content 2 over here, just by targeting this. And you probably guessed it, it's going to be include span, and I want to take up the last 6 of the 12 spaces that are allotted total for the entire grid. And then I could do the same exact thing. I could take this breakpoint and make sure that it takes up 12 of 12 in a situation which the browser window is shrunk down. And there you can see that guy is going to take up all that space. The reason why we have them included together or pushed together is because of this gutters part. So if I take that out of there and I want the gutter to show, you can see the gutter shows. And also you can see that if I shrink down the browser window, see the content split down, and that is being caused by the breakpoint. So there you go, guys. Hope you guys enjoy Susy. It's a lot of fun. It's a very nice grid layout framework that I personally think is much better than Bootstrap. And please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.